Today's story began with an unexpected find and the discovery of a secret that many knife enthusiasts are not aware of. A while ago, I purchased an old and rusty Deba knife, and before starting its restoration, I asked for help to translate the markings on the blade. This led me to the name of a 70-year-old company that is still producing superb knives chosen by some of the top chefs around the world. A knife that holds heritage, history and tradition. I took courage and decided to contact the maker to verify its origins. And guess what? They answered. Ciao! It has been a while since my last story, but I am excited to be back. If you enjoy restoration stories and want to follow more journeys like this one, subscribing to this channel is the best way to support my work and help spread this passion further. Now let's begin. Hello, Brad.
Hello. How are we?
Hey, good. How are you?
Awake, functioning, the usual. Doing the best I can.
After some greetings, Brad and I started talking about this Deba to confirm once more it was a true Sakai Ichimonji blade.
So yeah, it's hard to see. If you could hold it vertically for me. Oh yeah, flat out, Sakai Ichimonji Mitsuhide, and then the last kanji there is someone's name.
Yeah.
So, but because it is so rusted, it's hard to tell. I can see a montan on it.
Sorry?
So if you're on that backside, I can see a montan of some sort. So you definitely know it is a handmade knife, and you very likely can assume it is a carbon steel knife.
Yeah.
Almost guaranteed to be carbon steel. That white furling, the buffalo horn, white is rarer. White's much harder to find.
All right.
Normally, you would see white associated with most likely a higher quality handle.
He confirmed this Deba knife wasn't a top-of-the-line Kirameki, but a medium high-end one. And I voiced out what, in my opinion, would have been the biggest challenge ahead of this restoration.
Experimenting will be to repolish the back part. I have
that is going to be the hardest part, absolutely.
I have a plan because I don't have those big grinding stones, but I do have a plan, so I'll do a good job.
I'm keen to see it.
And so I started disassembling the blade from the handle and began to hand grind on a stone the Urasuki, the hollow of the knife. Very quickly, I realized the task was too big to do by hand, as I initially planned. And without having a big grinding wheel, I had to think outside the box. I decided to hammer the soft steel to push the hard steel forward. This is a technique used for some Japanese tools. The spine of the knife is still quite straight. The back of the bevel has a curvature to it. You can pick it up by looking at it. It's quite curved. So what I will need to do now is to tap the bevel to straighten up the knife. Now, since the spine is still quite straight, I will have to tap the bevel only. By doing that, I will be able to restore the actual bevel of the knife, and then with the grinding part on the whetstone, I'll be able to recreate a flat surface for the cutting edge and reshape the tip where there is this big chip. Let's work on it now. All right. Now obviously I don't have so much experience with it, so I think I almost fear actually I exaggerated, but it doesn't look like there is any crack to it at any point, so I feel like now it's a good time to put it on the stone. My plan at the moment is to basically keep the history. I did some polishing on the back to remove the biggest dips and pitting and make them a little bit shallower. The face I will not touch. The plan is to polish the top spine, possibly keeping it with a Kazumi finish, and thinking to mirror polish this ergonomic point, which is beautiful in itself, and I think it might result in something beautiful with some polish, some natural rust, a nicely regrinded bevel, and sharpened to highlight the two steels, and same with the back. So let's get to work. And as it turns out, the plan backfired. But before I show you more, let's get back to my conversation with Brad. Sakai Ichimonji participates in the division of labor, a network of artisans created to unify different specialized crafts to deliver a top-of-the-line product. So I asked what the company's objectives are for the future survival of this craft.
Of course. So our main objective is we really want to make people aware of and somewhat counter what our president refers to as cultural consumption. What we mean by that is you look at kitchen knives today. Of course, there are many like us who are fully artisan-made, fully handmade, and many other manufacturers also do this. But because of how things have modernized, there is a huge amount of mass-produced knives out there. You go to a Daiso or a 100 yen store, or like, $2 Australian store, and there's knives there as well. They're really cheap and they work just fine, but not for very long. You throw them away, you buy a new one because they're very hard to sharpen. You look at knives now, and about 20% of people in Japan sharpen their knives. And outside of Japan, it's probably less than that. Yeah. Because of this cultural consumption where knives and other tools are seen as cheap, replaceable items, it lowers the prestige of that particular art in general and consumes that culture and eats it until there's nothing remaining. We really want to do our best to promote food culture and tool culture, kitchen tool culture predominantly, but tools in general, to showcase that prestigious and high-end versions of these tools can exist, and they're not crazy expensive. If you buy them once, if you look after them, you're probably never buying them again. And you get to have this ultra-high-performance knife the whole time, or ultra-high-performance tool the whole time. We want people to be able to connect to those things, connect to the tools that they're using in their daily lives as good as possible, so that not only they have lifelong partners, but the art itself is sustained. Yeah. Our core objective of our second floor of our business, Ichitoi, is to make it so that 100 years from now, kitchen knife making is still a important and practiced traditional art. Because there is a very real possibility that will not be the case if we're not careful.
Yeah.
The spirit of preservation for the craft and care for this item created by hands is why I embarked on my restoration journeys. And speaking of journeys, Brad mentioned what most of us don't know about the origins of Sakai knife making on a large scale. I then asked him to explain more.
Me in the past that the tradition of Sakai, in particular Sakai knives, start from the Portuguese need of an expanding tobacco industry.
Yes.
So I don't know if you feel like saying a couple of words on that.
Yes, of course. I mean, the Portuguese brought many things into Japan. They brought in bread. They brought in pumpkins from Cambodia. They brought in card games. They brought in tobacco. And that's why all of these things like tabako, pan, karita, it's called kabocho now, but it's called something else back then, all came from Portuguese terminologies. The Portuguese brought a lot. Christianity, arquebus guns as well. They brought a lot into Japan. But the biggest one, at least for us, was tobacco. And then when Japan entered the period of sakoku, where they closed the borders off and were like, well, basically, if you don't want to become a tributary state of ours, we won't deal with you, which effectively closed the borders off and they got rid of everything. There needed to be a way to supply the people who are harvesting tobacco, couldn't make tobacco knives anymore. So Sakai started doing that and then turned from that once they tapped that market out into kitchen knives, especially as the swordsmiths and gunsmiths had less and less work because of a time of peace. And then when the Meiji Restoration happened, the Sword Ordnance Act happened, which I think was it 1876? Not fully sure on the year of that off the top of my head. But when the Sword Ordnance changed, they basically were all out of work and became fully kitchen knife makers from that point. So it's very interesting that it was effectively a foreign introduction that created this art for what it is. Not in the sense that it didn't exist already. Swordsmithing has existed in Japan for a very long time. Yeah. Started seeing swords all the way back in the Nara period, so very long time ago. But because of this need that was introduced by a foreign power introduction, knife making became a business due to that impact. Yeah. And to me, that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. you mentioned that the start of the actual knife production was a request from the Shogun of the time, if I remember right.
That's more or less correct, yes. When the tobacco knives were made in Sakai, the Shogun was like, this is great. This is fantastic. We love this. We're going to put this stamp on it which says Sakai Kiwame. And basically the Shogun was like, yeah, I want you to make more of these. I'm not 100% sure it was like an order or a request or permission or what. But basically, because of the Shogun at the time, Sakai Smiths were able to, or forced to, or chose to, or whatever they like, make a heap of tobacco knives and establish themselves as a foothold of high-end bladesmithing.
Yeah.
Which then turned into kitchen knives when they couldn't make, when, there was the tobacco knife market was tapped out.
This was an incredible history lesson for me. I had no idea, and hopefully by now you can relate to the pressure I was feeling. All this effort and history that led to this moment. I really wanted to do justice to this knife and to all the hands it passed on before me. And after I hammered the steel and inspected the blade, the most harrowing sight. I pushed the steel too far and cracked the blade. After weeks from restoring the knife and while editing this video, I still feel the pain. This is not the first time I find myself in such trouble. The memories of my hand planer restoration came back and my self-confidence went out the window. In that moment, I needed to find a way to save this blade. Now, unfortunately, I just discovered that most likely by tapping the blade, I cracked it. So now I have a bit of a challenge to overcome this problem. This is really unfortunate because I cared a lot starting this restoration to achieve the best result, especially in regards to the company and the people that made this blade. So I do feel a little bit defeated at the moment, because I didn't want this to happen. Now I have seen different shapes of Debas, and I'm evaluating changing the profile, not because I wanted to in the beginning, but because now I'm forced to either change the profile or reduce the length of this Deba. The only problem I have with reducing the overall length is that in order to keep a harmonious line on the knife, I would have to sacrifice a little bit of the marks imprinted of Sakai Ichimonji. But I don't like the idea. Now, thanks to one of their videos, I discovered that there is a different type of shape of Deba that I wasn't aware of until that video, which is, if I'm not mistaken, is called Kiritsuke Deba, which is a bit of a modified style of Deba with a pointier tip. Now, this is roughly the new profile I'm thinking of, and I do feel like I have to go with that. Now, the way I can see, unfortunately, the crack is not really just marginal. It goes about 1 centimeter into the blade, into the hard steel. yeah, it's a bit of a tough lesson, but essential for me to reevaluate my process. I use what I have to go through this process. It would be much nicer to have proper machines like they do in Japan, good big wheels, grinding machines to regrind the ura on the knife. But yeah, I have no access to those. Now, I still do think that I can recover it. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, this is an update that I think is worth giving, because it's an essential step to the process now. And I wanted to explain to you why, and also to apologize to Sakai Ichimonji for the mistake I made, because I was not intended to do that. I was intending to try my best to recover it to a nice and usable knife. In the next steps, after the first grinding round, I quickly discovered the second breakage, a few millimeters from the first. So I quickly decided to sharpen the blade more. And once I reached a compromise I felt comfortable with, I started the sharpening process. I don't mean to be dramatic now, but while sharpening I discovered 2 more cracks. I feel totally defeated. I was about to stop and abandon this project. It felt like it was the easy way. Choose another knife and start from scratch. I decided to take a break, and while I was thinking what to do, a thought came to mind. Wabi-Sabi, Daniele. Remember Wabi-Sabi. There is a beauty in imperfection. You might not see it yet, but it is there. This thought is what kept me going, and I remembered part of the conversation with Brad, where we discussed what values and beliefs stand behind the practice. I asked him if, in his view, Bushido played a major role for the craft, and the conversation led to a question that hopefully you will be able to help us answer in the comments.
I think the answer will be perhaps not what you expect. I don't think Bushido personally plays all that much into knife making at all. Bushido was something that the samurai class followed. The samurais were the people wielding the weapons. They weren't the people making them. The people who were making them put a lot of their value into making a good tool, making a tool that could be valued and treasured and used and was the pride of their work. For them, that is a pride thing, that is a branding thing. I don't think it's a Bushido thing. I think that's a little bit different, especially as Bushido stopped being an important thing in Japan, kind of around the time that knife smithing really started, the Edo period. They hit that time where, border was closed, samurai had nothing to do, they were turning to things like Roninism and things like that, which is specifically against what the Bushido practices were. And there's a lot of those practices that weren't necessarily always good either. It kind of varies. Yeah. However, you look at religious practices and you look at Shinto practices where they believe that everything has a soul in it. Everything has tamashi in it. Yeah. Making a good knife that could have a good soul inside it is very, very important, or at least was very important. So for me, I think the conversation there is more related to Shinto beliefs, if you're looking to an approach for this, especially as if you own a good knife, it has a soul in it, it is your partner, you need to treat it accordingly, you need to make it accordingly. Every person that's involved in that knife, from start user to end user, if they're following those beliefs quite strictly, at least that in particular in interpretation of it, because of course there's many of them, are going to treasure that thing for a long time. And I think that's the important thing. Smiths value making a tool that can be treasured. Owners value using and looking after a treasured tool that will stay alive for a long time because it was made with great care.
Very interesting what you said. I wonder whether the more ancient Bushido practices fused with the Shinto beliefs and the Shokunin Kishitsu derived or was born as a concept of dedication, diligence, honor in making, in following a practice, creating a soul in a tool. I wonder whether there is a broader correlation in the dynamic as it happens in cultures in general.
That's very feasible. You look back at like Emperor Emeritus Kotoba, who was like, I'm gonna get my friends together, I'm gonna start making swords together. But he was an emperor emeritus at the time, and the emperor was revered and should be held to the highest of standards. And the highest of, even if they're not a samurai or whatever, they're royalty at the time, Bushido standards are respective. Because he kind of blew up swordsmithing, because he kind of made it much more popular with the formation of like the Ichimonji school he was a part of. That's very plausible. Very plausible, because he started and kicked that off. The teachings entered, and then they kind of incorporated themselves into it. That'd definitely be a question for a historian, not for me. Mine, this is purely conjecture, but that would be my thoughts on the subject.
With this in mind, I followed through my work and completed this restoration, learning a treasured lesson that humbled me and gave me a new horizon to look at. And now, while assembling this knife and with the sharpening complete, I see it. The importance of cherishing traditions, caring for a tool, fruit of the work and experience of many people. Wabi-Sabi is a concept I believe each one of us can use and relate to. We all face the temptation and urge to be or look perfect at one point or another, but it is, in fact, our imperfection and traits that make us unique and cherishable. This knife, from a tool I had amongst many, became a companion that I will cherish in my kitchen and care for many years to come. If you enjoyed this video, remember to hit the subscribe button and check my links in the description, where you will find more insights and review on this knife. I'm also working on building a website where you will be able to participate and contribute to my work in different ways, and I hope you will hang around to help me continue my journey. Thanks for watching, ciao e a presto!